The PlayStation Vita and PlayStation TV are what you could call Persona machines. They are called this because almost the entire Persona franchise can be played on them, from the PSP remakes of Persona 1, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, and Persona 3, to the PS1 version of Persona 2, Eternal Punishment, and the PlayStation Vita remake of Persona 4. Add on Persona 4 Dancing All Night that is releasing later this month. The PS Vita and PSTV can play almost all of the games in the series. Because Persona 4 Dancing All Night is releasing so soon, I thought I would close the gap in my Persona reviews. Without further delay, here is my official review of Persona 4 Golden. Persona 4 takes place in Yaso Inaba in Japan, where a slew of murder cases begins right after a nameless protagonist, later in the series to be known as Yu Narakami, moves in with his uncle who works as a detective in the town. Once he starts making friends, they go off of a rumor called the Midnight Channel that dictates that if you look at your TV on a rainy night, at the stroke of midnight, the TV will turn itself on and you will see your soulmate. The grim truth is that they discover that this Midnight Channel is linked to the murder case, and Yu Narakami and his friends find themselves thrown into a strange world inside the TV set, doing their own investigation in rescuing victims and solving the case. The story of Persona 4 is more similar to Persona 3 than the previous games, but all in all, it's a lot more lighthearted and less dark than the previous games in the series in general. It does focus a lot on the high school life side of the game, and the whole case around the murder mysteries are more focused around character development than actual brutal and grim storytelling. Persona 4 Golden, or P4G as said by the fans, is a dungeon crawler turn-based RPG with time management and life sim elements thrown into the mix. You'll be going about half and half through running through dungeons and fighting through enemies in turn-based battles in order to get to the end of a dungeon to fight a boss fight and save a victim, as well as spending your days that you aren't doing this going through your normal high school life, having part-time jobs, and developing relationships with your fellow classmates. Before we get into the actual gameplay systems, we need to touch on what's different in this remake. A lot of remakes of games are more enhanced ports that add one or two new features, but Persona 4 Golden is an example of how you add a lot to a game. If you compare P4G to the original P4, you'll see that this new game has new characters, new social links, new dungeons, new boss fights, new animated cutscenes and story scenes in general, new voice actors, an extended epilogue for the true ending, a brand new golden ending that takes the story even further, TV listings that you can view when you're in your room. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. In short, they have added a ton of new features to the game. As I said before, you'll be managing your time between your social links and dungeons. Each day has various time frames where you can do things. You'll have the daytime where you can spend time with your social links, go to the shops, do side quests, and then evenings where you can also do this, but you can also go into dungeons and fight through enemies to go to a boss. The way the story progresses is you'll get to a point in the story where you can go into the TV world and into a new dungeon to go fight a boss and save the latest victim. You have a set amount of time to do this. You could have 5, 6, 7 days to do this. So you have to plan out those 7 days to go through the dungeon, come out of the dungeon to upgrade your equipment, do social links, the list goes on. But you have to make sure you go in, defeat the boss, and save the victim by that last day, or they will be killed. The actual dungeons and combat are very similar to Persona 3. The dungeons are set with doors and rooms, along with shadows roaming around that can start random fights. The main difference about Persona 4's dungeons are that Persona 3's Tartarus dungeons were really one huge dungeon, and it didn't really change very much. Some sections had different color schemes on the walls, but the fact that every floor looked exactly the same made it feel very repetitive when you kept going into the dungeons over and over and over and over again. Persona 4's dungeons all look completely different. They still have that basic doors, treasure chests, stairs layout, but every single dungeon looks like a completely different location, from the castle to the military base. Combat is mostly the same. Just like in Persona 3 Portable, you can give direct commands to any of your party members, so you don't have to worry about the AI screwing something up in the middle of a fight. You also have shuffle time for when you do well in a battle to get cards, to get new personas, stat boosts, healing, more experience and more money, etc. The Velvet Room is also intact, where you can go and give skill cards away to be able to be bought later to give your personas new skills, as well as fusing personas. All in all, the base gameplay is the same, but the story and a few things here and there are different from P3. As far as length is concerned, your first trip through the game should take you at least 35 to 40 hours, even if you don't go for the truer golden ending. When I did my replay, I only used the base persona and went for the golden ending. I was at 41 hours when I got to the true final boss that happens right before the ending. So even if you know what you're doing, the game is a pretty long game. As far as the presentation is concerned, they did pretty well for the most part. The visuals on the Vita are a little bit more touched up than they were on the PS2, and unlike Persona 3 Portable, all of the 3D environments are intact, so you don't have to worry about point-and-click menus. Performance is also done really well. There aren't any long load times to deal with. The only thing I'll make a note of is that there is some lag in the military-based dungeon. When you go through here, some of the battles take twice as long to load, even though they're the same kind of battles as every other dungeons. And some of the animations while you're in this specific dungeon will have a little bit of slowdown and lag. It is nowhere near game-breaking, but it is something that you'll notice because it only happens in that one dungeon. Persona 4 Golden is one of the most polished games and one of the most highly praised games the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation TV have to offer. On the downside, that one dungeon does have some frame rate problems. Outside of this is an excellent example of how you really go overboard when you're doing a remake. And this is one of the most memorable games for both the handheld fan and the PlayStation TV fan. PlayStation Vita Reviews rates Persona 4 Golden a 9 out of 10. If you would like to comment on this, feel free to below. And if you have any questions about PlayStation TV compatibility or would like to donate to my cause, feel free to head over to my site at vitareviews.net.